Welcome into the Fill in the Blanks podcast. I'm Tenitra Batiste here with my co-host Jarvis Davis, and we have a very special guest for you guys today that we are so excited is hanging out. She's going to hang out with us for this afternoon, especially to kick off Women's History Month. But as you all know, Jarvis and I are sports reporters first and foremost, so we always have to bring you the most up-to-date sports news, and we haven't had an opportunity to get with you guys, our Fill in the Blanks family, to talk about the firing of Lloyd Pierce. So we just want to spend a few minutes on that before we kick it with our girl, Dr. Regina Bradley. So Jarvis, you and I have been talking about this for quite some time. We can take it even back to November when you were a little less gun shy about it than I was, but you kind of called out the fact that, hey, you've got Nate McMillan lurking. And so what does that really mean? Now, of course, fast forward, and we do know that that was pretty much a hand selection of Lloyd Pierce. But sometimes you got to be careful about picking your successor. But here we are, 2.5 seasons into Lloyd Pierce's tenure. Team started off decently. The Hawks started off 10-9, but then kind of did a swan dive, 11-15. And so Lloyd Pierce is no longer. Now Nate McMillan is the new interim head coach for the Hawks. And the question becomes, obviously, there's a sense of urgency there, but realistically, why now and where do the Hawks want to go from here?
I think that when you just take a look at from a macro standpoint, right? Just looking at strictly numbers, so to speak.
Yes.
He was in the last year of his contract. And we already know a lot of times organizations don't let guys go into that last year of their contract without some type of assurance that they're going to be able to stick around. A lot of times organizations don't let head coaches go into your contract. You never hear about head coaches, it's their contract year, they're going to perform and get that big deal that they've been waiting for. That doesn't happen with coaches. So just looking at it from strictly that standpoint, that's why. If they don't want to pay him, invest in him, more than likely they weren't going to retain him anyway. So I believe that, just looking from that standpoint, that's one of the main reasons. The other reason is the thing that we continue to talk about on this podcast to people who are deaf in their ears. They got tired of hearing us talk about it. And that's the fact that you don't really hear when you hear talk about Lloyd Pierce when he first came in, right? He was a guy that everybody's talking about, he's a developmental coach. He has such defensive prowess and blah, 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 blah. And we've never seen that. We've never even seen a glimpse of it. And this was one of the, as a matter of fact, this is one of the worst defensive teams in the league, team. So, when you think about it from that standpoint, it's just like, okay, wow. So when you think about, those different aspects of it, they just didn't respond to him. They just didn't they weren't feeling him, as I say, I think at the end of the day, they didn't respect him. And when you don't respect your coach, like, trust me, as a former athlete, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like you do not hear him. He's there, he's talking, he's breathing, he's passing gas. Like he doing he has all the bodily functions coming out of him that lets him know that he's alive, but he's dead to you. And that's what I think eventually happened to Lloyd Pierce, is that the guys in that locker room did not respect him. Therefore, they did not respond to him on night in and night out basis.
Yeah, and I think that there were some things that were telling in Travis Schlink's press conference last night, telling in his conversation with the morning show on our station, 92.9 The Game, and then in Nate McMillan's press conference this afternoon. So I know last night, one of the questions I asked Travis Schlink, was just to kind of get a better idea of, where the players where they landed and what their thoughts were, what were their reactions. And he did say they were surprised. But I still say, Jarvis, the surprise wasn't in that he was being let go. It was just, oh, wow, he coached us through practice today. We all, went our separate ways. And then all of a sudden we get a text or a call or what have you to tell us coach is gone. I don't think they were surprised that coach was gone. I think they were surprised that it was in the middle of a back-to-back right after practice. That's my thought. Now, I think the other piece there that was telling was when I asked Nate McMillan kind of, it was very emotional, if you will, for him. But I asked him, I said, hey, is there a sense of urgency with the players? Like, are they seeing now with this abrupt termination of Lloyd Pierce, the seriousness of what, the expectation is from leadership, from Tony Ressler, the owner, and Jamie Gertz, from Travis Schlenk, from the Hawks organization? And his answer was very telling. He did, defend Lloyd Pierce because, of course, they're very, very close. He even had to get Lloyd Pierce's blessing before he took over this position. But he ultimately said it's not all on Lloyd. Lloyd took the L for all of us. He took the L for all of you players. But if you want to point a finger, you need to point it at yourself. And so every time you want to blame somebody about why we are where we are, point the finger to yourself. Why am I bringing those points up, Jarvis? Because it was a 40-minute presser with Nate McMillan, by the way, and a 35-minute one with Travis Schlenk. So we don't even have the time to unpack all of it. But the reason I'm bringing up that particular point is because that, along with Nate McMillan basically saying he don't F with basketball, like what is going to be is going to be. That I quote him is because that's a different type of sheriff right there. That's a different type of sheriff. And I remember after the Pacers game, before the Pacers game a couple weeks ago, like post-practice, pre-game, and then after the Pacers game, Solomon Hill talked about how they felt about Nate McMillan, the confidence that they had in him and his leadership. And when Cam Reddish was asked about Nate McMillan preparing them for the Pacers, whom Nate used to coach for, totally different countenance, Jarvis. Totally different countenance. To me, those were those tea leaves that were telling you all the story you needed about just what you said, which was he had lost those guys. No matter what leadership says, no matter what the brass says, I just still believe in terms of reading those tea leaves, they were lost, and they believe in his pedigree. This is somebody who took the Pacers to the playoffs 4 seasons in a row, regardless of whether parted ways with the Pacers after the bubble. So I do believe we're going to see something different in what we're going to get out of the Hawks from Nate McMillan. He gets Bogdanovich back tonight, at least for limited minutes, to kind of see what he can bring to the table. DeAndre Hunter is at least getting closer because he's a month out. But it's more important, it's the philosophy, it's the buy-in to what Nate McMillan can do, because as Travis Schlenk said, he's got the pedigree for it. So we shall see.
We definitely shall see. And speaking of buy-in, and the Hawks, hopefully, Nate McMillan can get that thing turned around. But speaking of buy-in, OT, I'm all in. I'm all in on this book that I've been waiting for. And
you tell me he's excited.
We're gonna bring in.
A little excited.
So I'm introduced to the Fake Fill in the Blanks family. A friend of mine, schoolmate, Dr. Regina Bradley from Albany, not Albany. Albany, Georgia. Albany, Georgia. Dr. Bradley, what's going on? I'm gonna call you that the first time. After that, it's gonna be Gina, okay? That's cool.
Family, what's going on? Thank you for having me.
Nothing too much. No, no. The pleasure is all ours for sure.
Yes.
We definitely just appreciate you coming on with us. I was going, after doing my little research, I like to take pride in that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. There's a term that you coined. I'm assuming that you coined.
What
it's
that?
Called outcasted.
Oh, yeah, that's me.
So that term right there.
Actually, no, I can't claim that. That's Andre Benjamin. He says you outcasted. That was on Empty Time. I just reinvigorated it. I reinvigorated it.
So for those who don't know how she reinvigorated that term, that means like the first time you actually encounter OutKast, or you came across OutKast, and I can say as soon as I came across that term, I was just like, oh my God, I absolutely remember the first time I was introduced to OutKast, and it was in the early 90s, and Gina, my cousin, he went on vacation for a little bit, and my aunt was like, hey, you guys want to come over here? Don't laugh at me. You guys want to come over here? My brother and I were like, hey, kind of help move some stuff out the house and stuff like that. All right, no problem. So she was like, so we got over there, we started going through some things, and it came across some CDs. And she was like, whatever CD's in there, you guys can have. Y'all can have it. Y'all can have it all. I'm going to do number
That's dangerous, man.
Like,
that's dangerous. That's dangerous.
I know.
Back in the day.
I was just like, you know me, Gina, like, I'm a guy, I grew up in the church, I listen to John P. Key, like, that's all me. Like,
you were saved it. You were saved it at the time.
I was saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost, you know what I'm saying? and the albums that were in there, never forget, UGK Riding Dirty, and doggone OutKast ATLians. Oh my God. When I popped those CDs in, you talking about life-changing experience to my, and it was just amazing to me the type of influence these cats had on my life. And I'm sure, you can speak to, and you're going to speak to how they've influenced you as well in your work.
I'm going to speak to it. Not ready for that. So I don't know, man. I'm still kind of in shock that the book is out. You know what I'm saying? On the one hand, you want everybody to read your stuff, but at the same time, it's like, man, I'm a little nervous because you got those diehard folks out there who have already started making their way to my mentions, by the way.
Oh wow.
Why did you talk about OutKast like this? And I was like, because it's my book.
Right.
But to answer your question, I first got outcasted, so to speak, in 1998 when I moved permanently to Albany, Georgia. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
About to start high school. Coming from the DMV at the time, whatever was playing in New York was playing in the DMV. So I'm thinking, at least at the time, everybody listening to the same kind of hip hop. You know what I mean? So I have my little radio mixtapes. You know what I'm saying? And I'm trying to make it, man. I'm like, well, y'all listen to this. Folks look at me like, we ain't listening to none of that. Where your cast at? Where your goodie mob at? I'm just like, what? But that, man, I was glued to the radio. You know what I'm saying? And then I was starting ninth grade, Westover High School in Albany. Okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, Jarvis, if I know you can feel me on this, man, because them Julys in Albany, man, you be out there.
Oh God!
But I would make a pretty decent marching band member. You know what I mean?
Right.
Otherwise, like nah. But I remember, one of the senior trumpet leaders. You know what I mean? It was them talking to some of the football team because the band and the football team was practice at the same time. They was in camp. Right. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden, I heard and I'm like, "What's that?" I still didn't know what that was. I was just like, "Oh." So I say it in the book. I was trying to shoot my shot. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't know that freshmen really don't shoot their shot with seniors, especially popular seniors. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But the way, shout out to Rodney Miller, man. The way he looked at me and was like, "Oh, shit, no." He was like, I was like, "Yo, what's that?" He was like, "It's Spodioidopalicious." And I guess I overstayed my welcome because he didn't look back at me after that. You know what I'm saying? Wow. So Aquemini is when your girl got outcasted. That's what I was talking about. You know what I'm saying?
I got you.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Them 2 years, like 98 through 2000, that was some special stuff, man, because Aquemini came out, and then the next thing I know, by the time I get, comfortable with Aquemini and OutKast of them, here comes Juvenile at 400 Degrees.
Yes. Speak on it.
And I was like, I just all right. So yeah, man, it was a good time to be, it was a real great time to be able to go to the club. I would never go to the club at first, but shoot, I was there for them Yin Yang Twin days though, to get low days.
It's a little different. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, Regina, because I can remember I'm from New Orleans originally.
Okay.
So I'm like Juvenile. That was like round 5 for us as far as bounce music. But I get you. I get you, because when I was living in New York, living in New Jersey, working in New York, I can remember the first time I heard "Ha," which is like what the world thinks is the original Juvenile. I'm like, that was about three albums in. Like,
We've been on that.
Yeah, I was like, but New York was like playing it like, Funk Master Flex was like, this is the dopest thing I've heard out of the South, and like you won't believe this. And I'm like, huh? We put that out 3 years ago. So I can remember having that experience, but then I can remember being in New Orleans and, they were not playing. It was very segregated at that time because you didn't hear, Florida music. You didn't hear Miami bass until you went to Florida. Like that was their thing. What you guys were doing here, like Dungeon Family, that was you guys' thing, and our thing was bounce. And Memphis had, A-Ball, MJG, and then PA and Houston, they had UGK. And everybody was kind of separated back then, like right in line for their space, because nobody was respected to the South like that. And then this kid, I remember he was from Decatur, came to Xavier. That's my alma mater. So came to Xavier, and he was like bumping this music, and I just remember all of us were just like, "What is this? Like this is wild! Like we like this." And it was because it was so like it was grimy, but it was smooth at the same time. Because I don't know, it was just, to me, Southern playlistic Cadillac music is the perfect way to say it, because it just embodied everything. It was just like pimped out, grimy, smooth. It was everything. And I just remember like we were all like, we don't really know what the hell he's talking about. This is not our experience, but we like this. We really do. So when I literally, went through some of the podcast episodes that you have, I was like, I really like the one where you talked about the sounds, the multiple sounds of the South, and wanted to ask you if you think, now that we do have that level of respect for Dirty South music, Dirty South hip hop, you think we've moved to a point in place where the rest of the world sees the diversity of Dirty South music the way we always have?
I feel like everybody's still playing catch up, man. It's really an interesting time to kind of think about Southern rap, because on the one hand, there's not a need to identify as regional in the way you did in the early 90s and 2000s, like you're talking about. You know what I mean? Because all you got to do is go to SoundCamp, you know what I'm saying? SoundCloud, Bandcamp, whatever. Yeah. Be like, I feel like sounding Southern today. I feel like I'm gonna sound like I'm from New Orleans today. I feel like I'm gonna sound like I'm from Houston or Atlanta or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. There's not that homage, but I think the thing that I'm most nostalgic about in thinking about Southern rap is folks like to think that it exists in a vacuum. You know what I'm saying? Like it happened now, and then that's all the time that it happened. But in the book, I kind of teased that out a little bit, especially in the introduction. I'm like, you wouldn't have Atlanta rap without funk music. You know what I'm saying? So like, you hear that connection, and looking back on it, I'm like, oh, well, my dad was my introduction to Southern rap, to be honest with you, because every Sunday was, we go to church. Jarvis, we go to church. Come home, get that really good after church nap. Ain't no nap like an after church nap, man. Like that's the best thing you can do in your life. You know what I'm saying?
Because they wore you out after being there for 2 and 3 hours. That's
I grew up seeing me, so we were real quiet, and we was in and out. But like when I went to friends' churches, because they were Baptist.
Yes.
I'll be worn out.
Yeah.
I'll be like,
that's why they have to have church dinners, because they kept you there for 2 and 3 hours.
Y'all too loud. Y'all too loud over here in the Baptist church. In the CME church, we got the little organ. Y'all got the drums and you got
guitar, the saxophone, everything.
Testimonies.
Look, Gina, I'm even worse than all that. I'm Kojic. I grew up Kojic. So
you be in church all day,
right? All day. You are never leaving church.
Devotion was like an hour and a half in itself. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Let me tell you my testimony from this week, now, Lord.
Right.
After all of that, my dad, like my dad's Sunday tradition, I'm pastor's kid, you know what I mean? My dad, he would come home, he wouldn't take no nap. I would take a nap. When I got up, I know he'd be outside cleaning the cars. And what is he cleaning the cars to? Cameo, Brick, SOS Band, all of them. all these things that were connected. And I was like, okay. So by the time that I really get to thinking about OutKast and Southern rap and what's so significant about it, I'm like, my daddy's been setting me up from the jump.
Yes.
So it's like, I feel like because we're in such an immediate access type of society now, because of social media and the internet, that we forget. And I'm not saying that, you know what I mean, you always have to pay homage. Like, I mean, that's the dope thing about hip hop, is that innovation and that remix is important. It's just, it bothers me, like, as the old folks say, it's something in my spirit. It just don't sit right when folks be like, oh, I'm the first to do. You ain't the first to do that, sir. Like, ma'am, sir. You ain't the first to do that. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I just feel like when we think about Southern rap, so many folks who weren't put on, like when we were put on, so to speak, are playing game. You know what I mean? And I just have to be like, well, let me put you on game a little bit even further. Be like, let me tell you why this is significant and where we go from there.
Yeah, speaking of like you talk about significance, like the first thing that comes to my mind is like Andre 3 Stacks at that award show. Well, I like as I was going through, you know, reading some different things, it just made me think about, that was kind of like almost like a war cry. Like the South was like ready to just go to war. Like, y'all don't understand like what we got going on down here. It's like y'all sleeping on us. And he was just like, man, we got something to say. And I was like, I mean, that's just a moment in time. I think that should be put down in books and, you know, as a historical moment in hip hop, because I feel like that was like the turn. Because, you know, you talked about in '98 when Aquemini came out, don't forget about Good and Mob Still Standing. Well, that was the soundtrack to my high school life. Like I did that album back and forth. Like, I never forget, like one time, like, because, you know, my brother got all the cars, you know, I never, you know, my parents never bought me a car. As you see, I'm 38 years old and I still kind of hit system wrong.
The man gonna come from you, man.
I know, it's all good. Like, you know, he a big time architect. He ain't tripping on me no more. But I just remember riding in the car and would listen to that CD consistently. And like, you know, how people getting asked for rides and stuff like that after practice, and we'll get out of practice. Like, hey, let me get a ride home. So, and then it was one time that one of my teammates from high school was like, man, y'all ain't got no other CDs? like, every time I get in the car, y'all playing that Good and Mob. I was like, shoot, I ain't got no issue with it. Like, that's just what it was. Cause it was just like, and another thing, like as far as like with these guys, OutKast, and I want to kind of get your thoughts on it too. Like, it seems as if like listening to Good and Mob and listening to OutKast, it was almost as if it was like a tour guide wrapped up into a CD, because you drop so many cross sections talking about headlining and Delow, and then you go and, you know, talking about going down 166, you know what I'm saying? I can't see where I'm going because the lights ain't on, you know. I know that's not how it went, but, you know, I'm trying to clean it up a little bit. Gil talking about those type of things, and it just, and I feel like you can get a great introduction to what Atlanta truly is just by listening to the music.
I mean, yeah, it's one of the things I talk to my students about in my OutKast class. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of y'all got put on game about Atlanta through the music. It wasn't that you opened a book and was like, let me open this social studies book and be like, oh, the city of Atlanta is the capital of Georgia and is located in the northern part of the state. You know what I'm saying? No. You know, like real talk. Like, for me, that was I'm gonna embarrass myself. I'm about to embarrass myself right now. So when I first moved to Albany in '98, you know what I mean? Youngblood's 85 was popping. You know what I'm saying? Man. And I'm like, remember what I said at the beginning of this conversation, that I was trying to get it in. I was trying to fit in. So I'm listening to it, and I remember we was posted up after school and we're just talking, you know what I mean? Like, Jarvis might know because Albany State, but Southside Middle School is right next to Monroe High School, right? So like the middle schoolers after school were forbidden to go to the high school side, so to speak. But you would hear like, I mean, that's where I got a lot of my like who I need to be listening to, because you would hear the knock in the trunk and you would hear the folks screaming and yelling, and folks might be going to football practice or whatever, track and field practice, you know what I'm saying? And 85 was like on everybody's dial, you know what I'm saying? So, when, they be singing the chorus and they be like, headed to Decatur. So again,
I think I know where you're going. But go ahead.
The Georgia Studies book, Bainbridge, their county is Decatur. So I'm like, yo, why is Youngblood keep coming to Bainbridge? And my friends were like, Gina May, don't ever say that out loud.
Thank God for friends, right?
That's when you knew they were trying to help you out when they said Gina May.
Friends. Yeah, this is part of my initiation into Gina May, right?
Yes.
I say stupid stuff like Youngblood is going to Bainbridge. So, I mean, the music is the introduction. You know what I mean?
Right.
When I hear about like Thomasville projects, when I hear about all of these things, I'm not necessarily reading a history book. I'm listening to the music. The music becomes an archive. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So like, what's kind of sad is when my students listen to 85 after they finish laughing at me. You know what I'm saying? Especially my Atlanta students. Dr. B, don't tell nobody that story ever again. I'm just saying. But it's like a lot of the projects and the communities that they're talking about in that music no longer exist because gentrification. Because you know what I'm saying? So it becomes like the music becomes like this living, breathing archive, right? You know what I mean? Like the Bankhead that T.I. talks about on I'm Serious and trap music is different than if you go down Hollowell now.
Don't eat Hollowell.
You say the whole name now, right?
Right. Don't eat Hollowell.
So it's different. So I think that's one of the other things that's so important, not just about Southern hip hop in particular, but just like hip hop in general, is that these locales that they shout out are so important because one, it might be nostalgic for one person, but for somebody else, it can put on game. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, okay, this is what this means. This is why 41 is this is why you don't go down Old Nat L. You know what I mean? There's two Campbellton Roads. The upper class black Campbellton Road with the nice houses off of Fulton Industrial, and then you get to Campbellton Road. Like, okay, don't be coming through here. You don't know nobody. You know what I'm saying?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And keeping it. I'm thinking about how you're talking about the influence and, what was going on when you guys were at Albany State and just moving there from the DMV to the South. And also a lot of the shift of importance for us versus there, taking nothing away, by the way, from Virginia State or Hampton or Howard. But the reality is down here is where we really live and die by an HBCU band, like for real. So that's where you really see the intersection of hip hop and the HBCU experience when you're talking about those bands. And like I said, I went to Xavier, so we didn't have, we still don't have a football team, but we didn't have a football team. But my entire family, I am the only non-Southern grad in my entire family. Yes. So I've been to many homecomings in my day. But I was thinking about that too. Like you talked about that influence of Southern hip hop on HBCU bands and vice versa. And I just think to myself, that's who we are. Like there's an intersection. There's always that cross section of who we are and how that influence tends to spill over into different spaces and places.
Yeah. I mean, HBCUs are so significant. Like you were pointing out, you know what I'm saying? If the band can't play it, then it ain't gonna be popping. Like, period. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I mean, and then the crazy thing is too, and I think I said this in the podcast episode that we did about HBCU bands for Bottom of the Map, but it's like you might have one song, but it'll be played 11 different times or 11 different ways, depending on where you are. So like, the human jukebox might play it this way, and then the Golden Rams might play it something totally different, and then you know what I'm saying. And it's all, I mean, like that's where like the competition is. You know what I mean? Like I don't mind like the back and forth between HBCUs because that's how we love.
Yes.
Like, if we ain't talking trash to you, you know what I'm saying? We don't care. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, that's so nice.
That's your heart. They try.
That's your heart. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, I mean, but if you come for one of us, then it's like a fire red thing, right? Like always gonna come like, oh, who you working with? You know what I'm saying? So I think that also kind of speaks to what I talk about in the book, which is like, in the same way that Southern Black folks aren't monolithic, meaning that we're not cookie cutter. You know what I'm saying? Our culture isn't cookie cutter either. So like the HBCU experience is probably one of the best examples of what that diversity, you know what I'm saying, what that diversity looks like, because we're all in conversation with each other. You know what I mean? And it also makes me think about like, where if you're in the deep South, where depending on where your school is at, which artist you're really going to pump up, right? So it's like if you're in Louisiana, I'm expecting Cash Money and No Limit. Like nobody else gonna play it like y'all. If I'm in Georgia, of course it's gonna be like the Dungeon Family. You know what I'm saying? Or the old school. You know what I mean? Like in just certain songs, you're just like, oh, okay, right? Like you can just and like Jarvis could probably speak to this, right? Because like Albany State, when they was really feeling themselves, like the referees and stuff would have to go over the intercom and be like, all right, I need y'all to calm down a little bit. We can't hear the plays on the field.
I mean,
we can't hear. I was like, okay, you know what I mean? So it's just like the different ways that the music brought us together through community. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's the thing that really stands out for me about Southern hip hop is that it reflects the community because of the collabos that we do too. It's like, you know what I mean? Like we're gonna bring all of these different things together. But I mean, like it's a community thing, right? And then it's also a respect thing. Like not necessarily expecting you to sound like us. You bring in what you have, and let's create something new. And then by creating something new, you're also creating new community. You know what I'm saying? So
you are, and I think we were on good display this past inauguration cycle because when Kamala Harris was inaugurated, we all won. Howard didn't just win; all the HBCUs won.
Yeah,
AKs didn't just win; the whole
B9 for the next 4 years. I mean, they was already. But don't let it be the Howard AKA either. It's really gonna be.
I know. I was like, my God, they actually let us take part. Like they actually let us celebrate as Deltas and as Howard, Bison. I was like, oh wow, the rest of the HBCU family and the rest of D9 gets to celebrate what? But I think that was a part of what hip hop does, what HBCU bands and the experience does. It's like she wanted to make sure it's clear that we stand together in everything that we do, and that it starts at the core, at the center of it is what is indoctrinated in you, whether you go to Albany State, whether you go to Xavier, whether you go to Howard, it doesn't matter. It's indoctrinated in us that this is one family.
No doubt.
Yeah. So Chronicling Stankonia, Dr. Regina Bradley. Like, I gotta ask you this. Like, so I know you talked about like the instance of like why you wrote the book, like for this the whole respect thing. But like once you figured out the why, like because I'm fascinated with people who write books because it takes me almost an hour to doggone write a 200-word article, if I'm doing something at the job and stuff like that. So like, so once you figured out why you want to write it, like what steps did you take then to actually start writing the book and then now bringing it to it being out now? And I still haven't got it yet. Just wanted to reiterate that. So how did those steps come about? And once you figured out why you wanted to write it, like how did it, and who was somebody that influenced you to kind of kept pushing you to try to, to keep going? Because I'm sure it got tough at times.
So prayer, lots and lots of prayer. So I initially started writing this book in 2015. I worked on that book for 6 years. You know what I'm saying? From start to finish. But it was a lot. Like I told you the why. Like I was sick and tired of people writing about hip hop from a Northeastern perspective. I was sick of it. I was like, I mean, that's all well and good for them, but that don't speak. You know what I'm saying? You know how like, you know how like country folk be like, ain't no kin to me. So that was part of it. I mean, like I felt like I, borrowing from David Banner, I felt like I put the South on my back, so to speak. And I was like, yo, like I need somebody to actually write about our experiences who will treat them with care. You know what I'm saying? And not just, it's the South. They got OutKast. That's all.
There's more to that.
There's some people who just like, y'all got OutKast. And I'm like, that lets me know that you don't know what you be talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
That's your, I mean, like if that's your only touch. So like, and that was part of it. Is like everybody has, for the most part, everybody has familiarity with OutKast one way or the other. But what I wanted to do with the book was kind of like make them theory, and theory is just experimentation. I'm like, all right, so if y'all think about the South from OutKast, let me figure out how they're presenting the South and how that evolves with them as artists, as men, you know what I mean? All that good stuff. So, I mean, my husband is the he's the number one OutKast fan in the house, believe it or not. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, he went to Morris Brown. So, again, that HBCU connect, we get on our daughter's nerve. You know what I mean? My daughter's like, I can't take you nowhere, especially a homecoming. I'm like, yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he was like, because I'm a perfectionist, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, I want to make sure that this comes out right. I want to make sure, because y'all ain't coming for me, you know what I'm saying? And my husband, like, he told me something, I kind of adopted it as my mantra, so to speak. Like, I was working and I was fussing about it, and my husband was like, look, man, you've been working on this book since 2015. I'm sick of you and I'm sick of this book. Stop 3,000 in your stuff. I was like, 3,000 in my stuff. And he was like, keeping it to yourself. You got people ready to read your book, and you over here just keeping it to yourself and trying to do all this other stuff. You know what I'm saying? So like in my office, I had him saying like, stop 3,000. Well, he didn't say stuff because I know we're trying to do, you know what he said.
You know what he said. Yeah, you know what he said.
I was like, okay, so that like became my mantra towards the end. I'm like, you know what? Okay, so then there was that aspect of it, but definitely, that and just wanted to make my folks proud, man. Like my family and community is so very important to me. I wanted to make sure I didn't get kicked out the family or the community by writing, no BS book. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
yeah, we will take your card.
Especially going somewhere like Albany State, because Albany State don't hold no punches. They gonna talk about you from here to your grandchildren. You know what I'm saying? They gonna be like, who was your grandmama? Oh, your grandma's the one who wrote that janky book on out. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, you gonna be a homecoming. I'm be a homecoming.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm be like, I'm be over here. I'm having a little drink. I'm having a little Jamaican restaurant, beef patties. And then, and then, like, yo, my mama said you the one who wrote that. You know what I mean? So it was just like, I want to make sure I made where I'm from proud. Like, I mean, I'm an academic, you know what I mean? But I mean, that's important, but that's not as important to me as when my people be like, Gina, you wrote that book. Like, that book slapped.
Yeah,
you know what
I
mean? That's what I want. You know what I'm saying? That's what keeps me going. And then also that it makes sense. You know what I mean? So it's but definitely my husband. My husband has introduced 3,000, and he's made Andre 3000 a verb, and I'm never gonna let him live this now.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things I thought about, and I don't really know whether you talk about the South or whether you talk about hip hop overall, that we've made the strides that I would have thought we had made when I think back to Salt and Pepper, right? Or it's Roxanne Shante. I watched a couple of her documentaries recently, watched the Salt and Pepper movie. And yeah, we've made some strides, but we've not. And then I looked at the whole community and I'm like, well, listening to Christina Lee and what you guys are talking about on the podcast. And I was thinking, what does it mean for you, especially when we're talking about Women's History Month, to be that amplified voice in this still male-dominated field of hip-hop, especially when you guys really dig into that on the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard out here.
Sports too, honey. I understand. I feel
there are some janky dudes out here. The book came out last week. I've already had multiple dudes in my inbox saying that I don't have no place to talk about OutKast because I'm a woman. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then you know they think they talking to Dr. Bradley, but they really gonna get Gina May, who
right? Because they asked for Gina May. They
right, yeah. That's how they introduce themselves. I want Gina May.
I'm over here minding my business.
Yep.
Next thing I know, you in my inbox talking about, well, you know, you just a super fan of OutKast and woo woo woo. So I was like, well, then write your own damn book. I'll wait. Since it's so easy, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's hard. I mean, like it's hard. You know what I'm saying? It's hard to actually document, and that's why I feel like I fit into the conversation, and where somebody like Chris falls into the conversation about hip hop is that it's male dominated, but women make interventions. You know what I'm saying? And nobody can document it like other women. You know what I mean? So it's like it gets on nerves when folks go after like Megan Thee Stallion, they go after like Mulatto, City Girls. You know what I'm saying? And I'm kind of just like, well, if they ain't speaking to you, just mind your business. Like, just keep it moving. You know what I'm saying?
Change the channel. Yeah,
change the channel, because usually what happens is you go from their craft, so to speak, to being straight up misogynistic.
Yep,
exactly. They out here hoeing in the street. I'm like, why you worried about it? Because they ain't hoeing towards you. Like, what's the problem?
Right.
Like, what is it? But in terms of me being a woman academic scholar, you know what I mean? I also recognize that I stand on shoulders. You know what I'm saying? So there's also like Trisha Rose, who wrote the first book on hip hop in the academy, right? So there's her, and then there's like Imani Perry, you know what I'm saying? There's Joan Morgan, who coined the term feminism. Then you got folks like Brittany Cooper, you got the Crunk Feminist Collect. I'm like, there are multiple women, especially in the South, who have contributed to conversations about the music, you know what I mean? And journalists, you know what I'm saying? So I'll talk about Christina Lee, but also like so there are shoulders, you know what I mean? And I'm just hoping that I set it up so that somebody can step up from where I left off.
Yes.
Because there's let me be honest with you. Like, I tell folks that my cutoff date for talking intelligently about Southern rap is 2008. And 2008 is when I started my PhD program. You know what I'm saying? So I don't listen to the music like I did when that's all I had to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's different. So I can't talk about some of the younger artists, most of the younger artists, from an intellectual perspective, because I don't have that. I won't necessarily say it's an investment, but I don't have that same proximity that I did to the artists that I grew up with. You know what I mean? And that's pretty much everything.
I could agree.
You know what I mean? So I think that there's that aspect of it. So being a woman in academic spaces is hard. Being a woman who studies hip hop is even harder. But being a Black woman who studies hip hop from the South is the hardest. You know what I mean? So I'm just hoping that the book opens doors, because it's what I say at the end of the book. I'm like, I don't want to be the only one. I might be among the first, but I don't want to be the only one. There's so much stuff about Southern rap that needs to be discussed. I'm not the one to do it. I'm not the one to do it. Come to the table, you know what I'm saying? Come to the table and come eat. That's it.
Chronicling Stankonia.
I love it.
Bradley. Man, like, this cannot be the last time you come on my show, okay?
Oh, it's all good. Let me know what's good. I'm more than happy to fit y'all into the schedule. This was dope. Thank y'all so much for having me and letting me talk about it.
We appreciate you. We appreciate you.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on. And then, like I said, go get that book, FIDB Found. Chronicling Stankonia is out right now. My brother just bought like 7 copies. Like, so you know he got his support. Oh man, he's like, yeah, you got the Kindle version. You know, he's telling you. The Kindle version, you can get the hardback, you can get the soft. I was like, hey man, look, I already ordered the book, man. It's on the way.
Right, on the way, right. And don't forget about the podcast, bottom of the map. That's pretty dope podcast too.
I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all so much.
Yes.
It's definitely both ways. Thank y'all so much.
At Red Clay Scholar, y'all go check her out.
Check it out.
Thanks, Gina.
All right, y'all be easy. Thank y'all so much.
All right, Gina. Thank you.
Oh man, wow. I ain't T. We could have gone for a whole.
Oh yeah,
hour.
we were just scratching the surface. We just scratched the surface.
Right.
Just scratched the surface with her.
Yeah,
she's awesome.
Yes, no doubt about it. And like we said, we're going to be bringing some guests. T is working on some Women History Month stuff that I'm all in for. Like, yeah, let's talk about women. Like, I live in a house full of them. I have 2 girls and I have a wife. So, like, I'm used to it. So let's do it. So I'm all for that. But just kind of just wrap up, put a bow on this thing, T. I think that it is no doubt that when you look at Southern hip hop, and like I said, I harken back to that moment when Dre said the South got something to say. Like, I think that was just like the beginning of like something just beautiful. Now, the way music is nowadays, like you know, Regina talked about as far as like where we are, and like I said, I don't listen to those guys like that. I hear songs from time to time, and I may or may not like it, but like I said, I love the fact that the tradition of, hey, this dude from the South. Like when you hear the music, you know that, hey, this dude's not from up north. He's not from the West Coast. Like it still has that its own sound, and that's what I love. The fact that you know it's continuing on, and that's kind of where it's going to continue to, like she said. If I can use one of her terms, like they're guys right now, or women are standing right now, they're standing on those shoulders, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it is the soundtrack of our lives. It really is the roadmap. I can remember the first time, you know, being in college and hearing and seeing all the faces and just the pride of everybody who was from the Atlanta metro area. And I remember the first time I came here and, you know, driving up 85 North and I see the So Def billboard and it was like, you know, yeah. So, I mean, it definitely has moments in time that we can't forget that really are, like I said, the soundtrack of our lives and really did tell the story better than any history book ever could about our experience, whether that's the Black experience in the South, the HBCU experience in the South, but just the experience in the South overall. So, yeah, I love when there's an opportunity for us to talk to people who have that experience and can just bring it in a very real way. And, you know, just, I don't know, it just takes us back. Like I'm about to hop in the car and go to the gym and I'm like, well, know what I'll be listening to.
Right. Exactly. Like, I'm like, I wish I had that motivation to go to the gym right now. But like I said, in my mind, like, yeah, that's going to be my soundtrack. That first day, whenever I step back into the gym and start, you know, getting my life back together. Well, first of all, we want to thank you, FIDB fam. Don't forget, you can always check me out on Twitter at JarvisD90. Check Tenitra out at Tenitra Batiste every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Tenitra, go ahead and give us that benediction, please.
Yeah, listen, it's Women's History Month. So whether we're talking about sports, we're talking about entertainment, or we're doing it's all for the culture. But respect your ladies, okay? Respect Dr. Regina Bradley. She's a bad, bad girl. She's a bad, bad girl. Chronicling Stankonia, professor at Kennesaw State University, amazing Bottom of the Map podcast. We can do anything that we put our minds to. That she is Black girl magic. And I want all you guys out there, you girls out there, to check her out and just understand and appreciate those women in your lives and all of the things that they've been able to do just to make your life go from good to great. So appreciate you stopping by. We're going to be back in the studio on Saturday. I think Jarvis is actually going to join me in the studio on Saturday for Twitch. That's what I had asked him to do, y'all. I don't know if he's actually going to do. But anyway, we're going to be back on at 92.9 The Game on Saturday. And we're going to be talking Hawks. We're going to be talking about All-Star and just anything else that comes our way. Because like we said, we just do things different. Peace, everybody.
Peace out.